Father Barnabas Powell is pastor of Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene, Greek Orthodox Church of Cumming, Georgia, USA. Here's Father Barnabas with Sunday's homily.
A preacher once went into his congregation on a Sunday morning. Place was packed. And when it came time for the sermon, the preacher stood up behind the pulpit and said, "Love one another." He turned around and sat down. The choir master scrambled. Said, he's done. The next Sunday, the preacher stood in the pulpit when it came time for the homily, and he looked at the congregation seriously and said, "Love one another." And he sat down. The choir scrambled again. The third week, guess what? By this time, the choir master had decided he was not getting caught by unawares ever again, so he was ready. The pastor looked at his congregation with love and said, "Love one another." Well, after 3 weeks in a row of that being the sermon, the parish council pulled the pastor off into the office and said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, when you guys start doing that, I'll move on." It's tempting. I won't. But I will say this: our gospel lesson today is a very stern gospel lesson. And it is an error to believe that loving one another somehow means always agreeing with one another. That loving one another doesn't include times of conflict and dispute. It does. In fact, loving one another during those times is the most important. And this is the mistake of the wicked servant. He made a statement when his master returned and asked for his investment back. The wicked servant said to the master, "I knew you were a hard man. You reap where you do not sow. You gather where you have not winnowed. You're in charge. You're the boss. I understand who you are, and I was afraid." There's your key. I was afraid. Isn't that amazing how powerful fear can be? Fear steals love from our hearts. Always does. Fear intoxicates us. Fear makes us blind to the other. And being blind does not feed love. And when we are blind to one another, when fear is ruling our homes and our lives, we're blind to the Master. I was afraid. When I was a boy, my mother was a single mom. I was raised by a single mom, me and my younger brother. And I did something I wasn't supposed to do. And whenever I did something I wasn't supposed to do and I got in trouble, my mother would have this speech that she would give me. I remember it to this day. My mother just celebrated her birthday, and you never tell a lady's age, guys. She just celebrated her birthday, and I called her up, and we have this tradition that we do. This is a sidetrack. I won't take this away from the time, okay? We have a tradition we do that on our birthdays, we call each other up And when one of us says hello, the other one starts singing, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday." That's why I did that to my precious mom, who's 20 years older than I am, so you do the math. and she just started laughing. And I reminded her, I said, this is our tradition that we always do. Another tradition that she did was giving me this speech when I misbehaved. Honey, you know better than this. You were raised better than this. You have my last name. You should know better than to conduct yourself this way. This is not who you really are. And my mom drove that home into my life over and over again, that when I misbehaved, when I did that which was unloving, when I did that which was fear motivated, when I did that which was selfish motivated, self-centered motivated, self-righteous motivated, when I did that, I hear the words of my mother echoing to me, "You know better than this. You were raised better than this. This is not who you really are." I've had people ask me about this gospel lesson because it's very stern what Jesus says in this gospel lesson. And make no mistake about it, brothers and sisters, the gospel of Jesus Christ is very, very black and white and very stern. But it isn't black and white like many of us have believed that it's black and white. It's black and white in that it says you will never escape the consequences of a life motivated by something other than love. You will never escape the consequences of a life motivated by something other than love for God and for each other. You will never escape the consequences of that. Your life will never escape the consequences of choices made based on fear or ignorance or self-righteousness or self-centeredness. You will always, 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 either here or there, you will face the consequences. Listen to what Jesus says the master calls this servant. You wicked and slothful servant. Cast him out. That's what these kinds of choices do, folks. They bring division. They don't bring unity. They bring division in homes. They bring division in hearts. They bring division in communities. It brings division. A life motivated by fear is a life that is constantly further and further moving to being alone and isolated, because that's the consequence of these motivations. But a life motivated by love finds ways to love the other. This is hard work, folks. That's the reason why the master called the servant slothful. That's a very fine, highfalutin word for that boy ain't no count. He's lazy. That boy ain't no count. That's what my grandmother used to say. That boy ain't no count. Never have figured out what that meant, but it wasn't good. If you got called ain't no count, that ain't good. The master called this servant lazy because a life motivated by self-centeredness is always the least you can do. It's the common way that people who are blind to the master live. They live lives of self-centered self-righteousness and fear and me and mine and my opinion and my thoughts and my attitude and my perspective, with no room for anything else. And in that slavery, brothers and sisters, the natural consequence of that kind of mindset is always cast out. It's always feeds loneliness, feeds division. But look what Jesus says the master tells the good servant. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will put you over much. Enter into the joys of the Lord. You will also not escape the consequences of a life based on selfless love. You won't. you won't escape the consequences of a life based on selfless love and the courage to do the hard work of love. Those consequences are always joyful, and they always lead to unity and peace. Do you have unity and peace in your home, in your heart? Are you gripped by the easy and lazy lifestyle of selfishness and fear? If you are, it is a heartbreaking reality, not anger producing. It's sad. It's pitiful. And you don't have to be there. You can make the choice to do the hard work of having your life motivated by love for the other and love for God. And watch how God grants you His kingdom. Amen.
You can follow Father Barnabas on YouTube or on our church website at stsrni.org. Thank you for watching.